Hey guys, I'm Sarah Lavonne and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am back tonight. It is officially July 1st, and so that means my monthly coffee and questions video. So while I let you guys log on, because this one definitely is live, I just want to let you know that Coffee and Questions is something that I do every single month, and it is my way to connect with you guys and answer your questions from YouTube comments, which actually I was scrolling through this month, and I am very surprised at how many non-questions, just like the nicest comments ever. You guys, especially on the recent videos that I did with my sister for her birth story and postpartum experience, you guys and your stories and your encouragement has been so much fun for the two of us. And so it was really fun for me. Even just now, I kind of got lost in all your comments and all the things that you guys have been commenting on previous videos. And so I have found a few questions from YouTube, and then mostly I throw out a poll once a month on Instagram. So if you don't follow me on Instagram, make sure you follow me on Instagram. If you don't subscribe, make sure you subscribe so that you don't miss a future video or a live, and then turn on your notifications because that's what will let you know when I am going live, because I have more of these coming right at ya. And so I'm gonna answer your questions today. Now, the other cool part about this being live is that I can answer your questions live as well. So if you guys are here and you happen to catch this, I know normally I schedule them and I will announce them over on Instagram when I'm actually gonna do the live. But today was like a really random day, and so I finally was able to sit down and then connect with you guys. It's very fun. So I am back in my home environment. Now, I will just also disclaim for those of you watching this is that I did film probably 6 or 7 videos that have not even come out yet while I was in Minnesota. So if you follow me, I was just in Minnesota delivering my nephew, not literally, but helping deliver and usher him into a healthy beginning of his life. And so I'm currently back in LA. I got here yesterday, I traveled, and I am currently in my apartment. Normally I'm in front of my fireplace, but I just got a Peloton, and it's this beast of a machine that's currently sitting right where I normally film. So we're chilling on the couch today. And I'm so excited to connect with you guys, also to be back in LA and continue to put out content that's helpful for you. So I see Katie, is there a reason for what? So I will scroll through your questions in a little bit, but I really want to jump right into your questions from YouTube. We're going to start there because I have less from YouTube than I do from Instagram. Of course, on these lives, I don't get to put my little disclaimer slide. So really, I want to make it very clear that this is for educational purposes only, that you guys have your providers that are your resource. I am not your medical provider. I'm here for some education related to medical stuff. I am a registered nurse, so I can speak to nursing education, but I am not your provider. So always, if I make a recommendation today, that is a loose recommendation. Make sure you check in with your provider prior to trying anything that I may suggest today. And honestly, I don't even know what questions we're gonna answer. I know the ones from YouTube, but I don't even know what I'm gonna choose from Instagram. So it's about to be a real fun, exciting, random coffee and questions for June 2020, all right? So you're currently on my phone, and feel free to keep throwing your questions in. If I don't see them, you can just copy and paste and keep throwing them up, / I will prompt you when I'm ready to do YouTube questions. So in order to make sure that I can see your comment, I would wait on your question to put it in. I might see it, I might answer it on the fly, but also save it, and then when I'm ready, be ready to throw it in there for those of you that get to be here live, okay? So we're gonna go over to YouTube, and I'm gonna read you some of the questions that you guys had from previous YouTube videos. So this comes from my Coffee and Questions Live Part 2 that was from last month that I did in Minnesota. Isabella H says, my husband is a wonderful guy, but he has the common misconception that birth is essentially where we go to the hospital and have a baby and that's it. This is so great. I tried to explain the importance of laboring at home and how I am going to need his help with interventions and advocation, but I can't find the right words. Can you summarize why things like the Coping with Labor class, which is on my website, are important, and how he is able to impact the birth experience? What an insightful question, Isabella. So, P.S. Isabella, if you're watching, I saw all of your comments and all of your questions. They were all awesome, but I chose this one for today. So to summarize, I could go on and on and on. So for all you partners out there, First of all, giving birth is an experience that your partner will remember the rest of their life. It is not just a flippant any day thing. The women tell their birth stories constantly when they are like throughout the rest of their life. Even now when I'm working with clients, like the mother of the patient who's pregnant, she always wants to tell her birth story. Like, you remember this for the rest of your life. So this, just to get us started, is a super important day for these women having babies. And so that's number one. Number two is that birth has the potential for really impacting your life in a positive way and kind of launching you into parenting in a really positive way. But it also has the potential for being really actually physically and mentally traumatic for the woman. And so, first of all, when we look at birth and how impactful birth, let alone it'll be no matter what for her, but also the fact that there's risk of trauma, we need to understand when we look at trauma, and I mean trauma, like there's that, but then there's also this whole realm of like what I would call an unhealthy birth memory. So one of the things that I preach, you'll hear all throughout everything that I do, is that the goal is healthy mom, healthy baby, no duh, and then healthy birth memory. And that birth memory is the mental health piece. And so there's nothing worth your mental health. That's also something I say all the time. And so with that, when you look at the birth memory and what equals a healthy birth memory, you learn that one of the biggest components is that she never felt alone. And number two is that she made all of the decisions for herself. Unfortunately, the movies do not do a good job about telling us how things are. And P.S., I am very much on my radar. I have gotten a ton of DMs and comments of people being like, you should do reaction video to TV shows or movies. So if that's something you want, let me know in the comment box down below, because we actually just watched Father the Bride Part 2 as a family, and I like couldn't even hardly watch it. I was like, this is why there's an issue with birth, because birth takes a long time. For a first-time mom, it is not a walk into the hospital and give birth and that's it. It's a minimum of 24 hours. Of course, flex and flow, like there are tons of variations of that, and that's why like everything is a loose thing, but in general, you're expecting at least 24 hours of painful contractions. The number of times we would send people to the hospital and send them home and you're like, what? The what is what you learn in a childbirth class slash you consider like learning and watching some of these videos, okay? So Hollywood does a really poor job. Labor takes time. It's super impactful on the woman and her birth memory. And so I would say like start there. The other thing is she will be looking to you to know how to help her cope. Like imagine if she got her arm cut off. This is maybe a bad example. This is totally on the fly. This is why lives are really fun for me. So imagine she cuts off her arm and that's like considered a normal thing for life, but it's not for you, right? Like I'm like, oh, for a medical person, I know what to do. For you, you're gonna go, oh my gosh, and freak out, be like calling an ambulance and not know what to do and like be like, okay, should I tourniquet it? And maybe you try that and it doesn't work. It's kind of the same for labor. Not that your arm's gonna be cut off, but like that's the same idea. That it is an acute circumstance that can be very overwhelming. It can be very noisy. It can be lots of fluids. And so it's important that you know how to support her so that she doesn't end up with a traumatic birth memory that can really impact your family forever. That's my summary. Take my coping with labor class, guys. That'll especially train your partners. Take my childbirth class, watch my videos, do all the things. It will help you. That's as fast as I can go with that one. Okay, so this one comes from Hannah's postpartum experience, which was the last live that I did with my sister. We talked through all the things we did postpartum. Let me know if you've seen it in the comment box down below. This comes from Hannah Lang. She says, is it really the nurse's job to help with breastfeeding and latch postpartum? With my first child, I felt like I was just referred to contact lactation instead of assisting with the feed. Okay, I'm gonna try to be super PC here, okay? But I am a registered nurse. I've only worked, well, that's not true. I've floated to postpartum and pediatrics. I worked through nursing school, so I like have some exposure to pediatrics as well. But my career has been in labor and delivery. And one of my pet peeves is poor nursing care, okay? Your nurses in general are there to promote health. Okay? When you have a newborn, what does your newborn need to be healthy? Milk / food, not like real food, like either breast milk or formula, right? So as the nurse, if any of you postpartum nurses are out there, I know that it's the same. I know that there's a lot of education that feels very mundane. And I know that it takes time, but it is their job to help you with breastfeeding and latch. Now, depending on demands on the floor and how many other patients and what's going on, they may feel overloaded and feel like they have too many patients, there's too many other things to do, that gets the shaft. But honestly, what's happening on the floor with your nurses and what they're experiencing and their overwhelm is a managerial problem on behalf of the hospital, not your patient problem. You really should not even know that how many patients they have, how overworked they are, how short-staffed they are. And I know we're human, and myself included, you make a comment about your own stress level, but then it becomes the burden of the patient, and that's not your responsibility, okay? It is the postpartum nurse's job to help you latch. If there's problems or if they don't know how to answer a question for you, then you call a lactation consultant. Now, some hospitals, you see a lactation consultant no matter what. I would suggest that you plan on seeing a lactation consultant and having your whole lactation team once you deliver, especially if you intend to breastfeed, because breastfeeding, you have to be pretty gung-ho about breastfeeding for the majority of women. They don't realize how hard breastfeeding is. And so know that breastfeeding's hard. Know that you need the right education and support. Yes, it's the responsibility of the nurse. If you're not getting what you need from your nurse, keep asking for it. Partners, this goes back to question number 1. That is partially your responsibility, is to know how to reach out, how to get the help, and ask for help when you need it, okay? That's actually my sister's biggest tip for when she delivered was, I wish I would have advocated more in the hospital for the help that I needed, okay? So yes, it is. I'll get off my soapbox because again, I have no tolerance for poor nursing care. I know you're tired, but you're working. So anyway, all right. So this actually has to do with exercise in pregnancy, which I have actually a whole series brewing. So stay tuned, that and for postpartum, it'll kind of weed together. And I have some fun things in the queue coming for that. So this comes from Sarah Watrous from Coffee and Questions Live Part 2. She says, question for Sarah, not pregnant yet, but worried that my job has a bit too much physical part to it. I'm a restaurant manager and spend 10 plus hours a day on my feet, running, lifting, and carrying huge trays of food. Are the same restrictions on lifting at the beginning of pregnancy as the end? Thank you. Okay, so basic, quick response to exercise during pregnancy and safety. Number 1 is if it feels okay, you probably can do it, all right? There are some restrictions for exercise in pregnancy, which I could do a video on. But in general, what you're doing now, pre-pregnancy, likely you can maintain through your pregnancy. So even lifting, stuff like that, it depends on how you're lifting. If it feels bad, don't do it. That's also a really simple rule of thumb when it comes to exercise and doing the work, right? Now, mind you, if you're lifting 100 pounds, maybe not, but also through your pregnancy, you may feel totally normal in the first trimester, and then moving into second, third trimester. By the third trimester, you may not feel like you can do the same thing, which I would be surprised if you could do exactly the same thing at your third trimester as you can your first, okay? Rule of thumbs are trust your body, listen to your body, and then if you've been doing it pre-pregnancy, you probably can do it during pregnancy, but if it feels bad, then don't do it, okay? That's the short answer. All right, so this comes from All About Vaginal Exams, Cervical Exams, and More. So this is an old video that y'all still are commenting on and liking. Comes from Life of Rhoda. She says, can it be seen on ultrasound? This process sounds so painful. So the answer to that is, for vaginal exams, it cannot be seen on ultrasound. Now, if they did a transvaginal ultrasound, maybe they could see if there was a little bit of dilation. But honestly, the only way to know is by checking there. That would be a really awesome invention for somebody to do. The answer is no, you cannot see dilation exactly on ultrasound, okay? All right, this comes from 10 postpartum tips for your family. This one, guys, if you have not seen this video, this to me is like my gift to you for your postpartum period. All right, because especially for those around you that are there and willing to help, this hopefully will help navigate that for you and help avoid issues for you. So send that video to your friends and family. But we're gonna get real COVID specific for that, because the question from Dee Dee Dalzin says, what about visitors coming over during the pandemic? I'm 38 weeks pregnant and everyone keeps asking me about visiting the baby during this COVID-19. If they'll be able to come see the baby, what are your suggestions? Okay, so I wish I had better news for you. But I don't, especially with the rise in COVID cases in the United States. Honestly, your newborn is an at-risk patient population, okay? They are at risk, higher risk for complications of the regular flu during like the first 6-ish weeks. And so my recommendation to you is, first of all, talk to your doctor and your pediatrician, see what they're saying. Second of all, you're gonna have to limit visitors. You can do whatever you want, but I also think that all of us guys, we are in this together. And unfortunately, the United States has kind of been put to shame when it comes to stopping the spread of this disease. Wear your masks, socially distance. It is not that hard. Tell your friends and family to do the same. I know that our lives are upset and they're not the same. Even me, like I live by myself, and being here, like it's about to be real lonely. So I'm about to be on here probably a whole lot in response to that. And so we are gonna have to make sacrifices. And especially if your friends and family have not been socially distancing, if they've been going out, if they haven't been literally isolated alone in their home for more than 14 days, then I would not recommend that you are letting anybody over. Now, here's what we have chosen to do with our family, is that really the lowest risk is outdoors where there's great airflow through the thing, so not indoors, and then keeping that social distance. And I would move it to like 10 feet, okay? If you're like in the backyard and you're 10 feet apart and no one has symptoms and they've mostly like not been around groups of people, you probably, again, very loose recommendation, you could be safe to hang out outside 10 feet apart for a shorter amount of time so that they can see your baby, they can connect with you guys. I would not suggest letting them hold your baby, even with a mask. Like, keep your distance, stay outside, okay? Now, the other consideration is, who are your close family and friends? Because if we're talking like 40 people seeing your newborn, like, no, I'm not gonna suggest that. But like grandparents, depending on what they've been doing, a lot, especially elderly grandparents, like a lot of them are gonna be mostly at home, having been away from crowds and not interacting with anyone. If they've quarantined at home for 14 days, I don't see a reason why it would feel really that unsafe, if not unsafe at all, for them to see your baby, hold your baby, touch your baby, be in the same quarters as you. So that's like my very loose recommendation. Obviously, like you can do whatever you want, and this is not like a medical advice type situation. But I feel like we also need to sort of be reasonable rather than just say like, and the anxiety set in of like, no one. That like, you know, if they haven't been around literally anyone, like for me, prior to going to Minnesota, I went to the grocery store once in 2.5 months. So no, twice. And so like, I'm not gonna have COVID when I've been at home my whole life, right? Makes sense? So that's my recommendation, loose recommendation, and do what you want. All right, last question. This comes from my labor aid recipe, all about drinking and hydration in labor. Irina James says, I went to go buy the rescue remedy, but noticed that there's 27% alcohol in the stress relief remedy. Is that safe during pregnancy and breastfeeding? It makes me hesitant. Okay, so the rescue remedy is a bottle that is this big, this tall, and this wide. Okay, it's so tiny. I left it in Minnesota. Oh, I'm so sad. I'm gonna have to have my mom send it to me. Random thought. I'm like, I left it there, shoot. So it's like this super tiny remedy of homeopathy, and you literally put 3 drops, like drops of water in an entire pitcher of labor aid. And so No, it could be 100% alcohol, and honestly, it's so dilute, it will make absolutely no difference for your pregnancy or your breastfeeding. It is totally safe. Now, mind you, of course, check in with your provider before ingesting anything, but in general, that amount of alcohol, you can, I mean, a sip of, it's like for me, if I have a sip of wine, I'm not gonna be drunk. It's like so dilute, it's not a big deal, okay? So that is what I got from YouTube. Now I'm gonna go over to Instagram and pull up your poll and answer as many questions as I can get through. And then I'm gonna leave about 10 minutes for me to answer your questions from here, because I see so many questions coming in and I see some that are like really good. And I wish I could just answer questions all day long, but I'm like, these long videos, I'm actually very impressed that for those of you that watch the entire labor story and the entire postpartum one, very impressed with you. God bless you, because those were long videos. So I'm not trying to be on here for 2 hours, but we'll do the best that we can, okay? So, all right. I honestly, like, I did no preparation for this, so we're gonna like scroll and find some that are good. Mind you, all of them are good. Okay. Chelsea Frank, of course I'm gonna answer this question. She says, do you do bundle birth services in different states besides California? 100%, I actually do global services. So if you are anywhere in the world, you can contact me through my website. She says, how can we get into touch if we are considering your services? Go to bundlebirth.com. All the online classes are there, and or you can just email me at bundlebirth@gmail.com and say, hey, look, what are my options? Set up a one-on-one call if you're interested in my services. So yes, 100%, I am here for you guys. My mission and dream is global impact, not just national or local, global. So I am here for you no matter what. All right. There are a good amount of personal questions in this poll, which is somewhat new. So if you guys want a personal coffee and questions live all about like who I am, let me know in the comment box down below, and maybe I'll have the guts to do it. I did throw out a poll on Instagram asking that question, and I got a good response. Most of you said yes, so we can throw it in the queue if you would like. All right, Samantha Hopkins asked, and this comes from the birth story, Hannah's birth story that I have on here. She says, do all hospitals allow the partner the option of catching the baby? So my brother-in-law actually like delivered his son, and this would be very much doctor specific. So if you're interested or your partner's interested in catching the baby and like reaching down and helping the baby out, this is very much going to be up to the doctor. So you can ask the nurse, and then especially if your doctors rotate, then ask your doctor, is this an option? And then also know that they're not just gonna be like, okay, here, catch the baby. They'll be like, okay, the head's out, shoulders are out, and then they'll be like, okay, reach down, and they'll help guide the baby out with you, okay? And make sure baby doesn't fall. They're the ones that are still liable, so they're not just gonna leave you to like, hey, figure it out when I have a whole degree in this. Okay, so ask your doctor if that's what you're interested in, okay? All right, if, she also says, I'm like, maybe I'll answer somebody else's. All right, that's another good one. Vicky Babe says, what was your most surprising part of your experience with Hannah delivering? Because I've been a part of over 5,000 births and been very invested in my clients. I remember like details of births from 20 years ago. I'm not that old. From 10 years ago, right? And even in nursing school, I remember things there. So I would say the most surprising part was how impacted how much her postpartum hormones impacted me. Like I was a weepy mess. I do not cry, guys, ever. Like I well, and then I like suck it in to not let it well or not let it fall over. And I have become so emotional. I will cry at the least touching thing ever. Like if somebody else gets like, oh, I'm like, oh, like I'm very like kind of a mess, more emotionally than I ever anticipated to be. I also was very protective of her, which was also very surprising to me. So I think that it was like the emotional impact that I was like very emotional about it. All right. Give me a second. All right. Is it okay to ask the nurse? This comes from Lindsay Olivia. Is it okay to ask the nurse to take photos for you when the baby is born with the COVID visitor policy? Absolutely. Okay. The nurse is going to prioritize her care. So like if her something's happening, like of course she's going to take care of you. But if there's an extra nurse or whatever, or like for cutting the cord for the partner or something, like of course you could say like, I know we don't have extra hands. Here's my phone. If you feel like you have a moment, you can like, would you be willing to take pictures for me? Some nurses will be like, oh yeah, no problem. I was that nurse. I love taking photos at first. And other nurses will be like, no, like that's not something I do. Or they might be like, well, I'll try. So flex and flow on that one, but absolutely you can ask your nurse and see what they say. All right. This is great. All right. Ashley Ellenson says, can I teach my 4-month-old to breastfeed after exclusively pumping that long? So the answer to this is yes. In theory, you totally can. It may take a lot of work. Especially once they're used to the bottle, then it is harder to go back to the breast, but absolutely. So this is where for all your breastfeeding needs, guys, find a lactation consultant to work with you. And the other thing is this, that not all lactation, just like nurses and doulas, like not all people are created equal. And so if it's not working with a lactation consultant, then try somebody else. And I would try at least 3 if you're not getting what you need. Now, mind you, if they're all telling you the same thing, then I would say like take a hint. Like that's probably the truth. But also like you're going to need some support. You're going to need some education. You might need some assessment of what's actually going on, and you're going to need to try, right? And so I would say try 1 feed at a time and see if they'll actually latch. So yes, it is possible. All right, Just a Girl from Shanae says, how do you overcome birthing fear? So fear of birth is extremely common. And even like, and I wouldn't say like actual like fear like you go to a therapist for is less common, but for those of you that are here right now, give it a like if you are or were afraid of your birth. You can hit the thumbs up for those of you here, and I'm gonna see it go up in a second because, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I just got very distracted by you, Emily Wisby, because I saw your sister's a labor and delivery RN, just like my sister. I'm the sister that's the labor and delivery nurse. Anyway, fear of birth is extremely common. I just saw the likes go up like crazy. And so yes, this is a thing. And 2 is that, first of all, I would say address it. Recognize like I'm afraid. Also know that everyone is a little bit afraid. And number 2 is the right education and the right support. To be honest, like I've dedicated my life to this because this is the thing that I see make the most impact on your birth. I think there's so much misinformation out there. There's so many horrible stories. Hollywood has not helped us related to birth. And so identifying what is the fear, what are the specifics, what's that one story that like really stuck in your brain that really like impacts you. I have a client right now whose mom had a postpartum hemorrhage, and which means she bled too much after birth, and I guess she almost died. Or actually, I also have a client whose mom or grandma died in childbirth. I can't remember if it was her mom or her grandma, but like, if that's your context of what birth is, yeah, you're gonna be afraid of birth. And so identify what's the real true fear. What about birth are you afraid of? And then fill that in with education and neutral education and go to the right sources, guys. Like there's so much just like disempowering and not neutral, totally biased information out there. And so find answers in like a empowering way rather than a like disempowering way. Hi, Joelle. I just saw that. Okay. All right. Okay. Can you talk about your flight and what precautions you took on the flight? This is traveling with COVID / traveling in a pandemic. Quick answer is I did have an N95 mask that I wore. I had one each for each way. I wore my hair up so that I didn't have to deal with touching my face or brushing my hair out of my face. I had hand sanitizer and wipes and an extra mask over the one mask so that the under one didn't get dirty. I wore something with deep pockets, and anything I needed easy access to, my ID, my phone, my AirPods were in my pocket. So that I could just access that and I didn't have to open my bag. I actually never opened my bag when I was on the flight. I disinfected everything. I washed my hands as many times as I could. I hand sanitized when I needed to. I stayed 6 feet apart. I waited till the end of the line to board the plane because it just, people, you can't control like people. And I gave them like the death look when they were coming closer than 6 feet. I was like, excuse me, back off. I'm trying to like keep myself safe here. Like we all have to be in this together. And then I prayed a lot, and so far so good. We'll see in 14 days how good I am, but I feel like with an N95 and all the precautions, and also like I'm a nurse, so I know like donning and doffing PPE and stuff like that, so that would be my recommendation. All right. Okay, so Merari Josso from Instagram says, do you recommend trying for a VBAC or is it too dangerous? I've had 3 vaginal deliveries and 1 C-section. So for you specifically, I would say you've had 3 vaginal deliveries that's amazing and makes you a very strong candidate for a VBAC, like more so than maybe anybody. So that's number 1. And number 2 is, I will disclaim, I very rarely give my opinion. Mind you, this is very much backed by science, but I try to stay very neutral. So I will just disclaim I am biased towards VBAC. I think when you weigh risks and benefits, that the risk of a VBAC versus all the risks of a C-section, that if you've had a C-section and you have any desire to have a VBAC, that you should try for the VBAC. Of course, there are risks involved. I talk all about that in my VBAC class. So if you're considering which side to go, I literally lay out everything you need to think about. I give you questions to ask your provider, talk about how to set yourself up, what makes you at more or less chance of it. So take my VBAC class for 1, and 2, I do encourage you guys to try for a VBAC / talk to your providers about it at least. All right, is it normal? Night Owl 11 says, is it normal for a baby to move less during 37 to 38 weeks? The answer to that is, in theory, yes, but they don't actually move less. It's just that the movements end up being less pronounced. So they're like, hey, I'm here, versus, hey, I'm here, right? Especially when they're smaller and there's so much more space, like they're flipping and flopping and tumbling and moving all around. Whereas towards the end of your pregnancy, they're like, I'm trying to stretch it, like I can't, and like bang, bang, here I am, I'm good. So yes, they should be moving, but the movements might feel a little less like intense / like, is that a movement? Does that really count? Yes, it counts, okay? You can go over to my warning signs of pregnancy where I talk about fetal kick counts and baby moving being a really strong indicator that everything is okay. All right. This is a really solid question. Okay. Christine 19 says, can your dilation effacement station regress from one appointment to the other? So meaning you go to your doctor's office, they check you, you're 1 centimeter, or say you're 90% effaced -3 station. Next appointment, you come back a week later, you're 1.5, 80% -3 station. Okay. The answer to that is, in general, as long as the head hasn't moved like out of position and it was really applied to the cervix before and now it's not, in general, you're not gonna regress. It would more be discrepancy between examiners. So like when I go inside, like I'm really truly measuring with my fingers like this. It's completely blind. I would have to feel without measuring with a measuring tape. And so my 2 might be somebody else's 1.5. So I would say if your dilation effacement station is somewhat the same as the previous exam, maybe it went back, just assume it's the same. That's really what matters to you, whether it went backwards in time, even if it did, which they really don't. Like once you're dilated, you're pretty much dilated. it won't make a difference to your labor. It means nothing negative for your birth experience, okay? All right. Lots of doulas on here. I'm actually impressed. Okay. So many good questions, guys. Is there research-based foods to avoid while breastfeeding? This is from Brit Hutch 12. Quick answer is anything you can have in pregnancy, you can have in breastfeeding. And there are foods that can decrease your milk supply. So this is pretty common, like on Google. I'm like, the first one that comes to mind is peppermint decreases. That's like peppermint oil, not recommended because it can decrease your milk supply. So you can look that up online, but in general, if you can eat it in pregnancy, you for sure can eat it in breastfeeding and more. So all your like bad foods, your cold cuts, your sushi, all of that you can have during breastfeeding. All right. How are you doing being back in LA? You guys are so sweet. I am staying busy. Today has been a wild day. I still have so much more to do. I appreciate your concern. I cried pretty hard last night looking at pictures of him, but life goes on. He's not my child. I wish he was, but he's not. The other thing is, like, I'm considering freezing my eggs. Insider scoop for those of you that are watching. And so if you would like to see that documented on here, I'm open to it because I'm currently 32 and my clock is ticking, you know? So, all right. Okay. Me in Neepdom says, what can we do early/throughout pregnancy to better prepare for labor and birth? My number one recommendation is diet and exercise. I know it's not fun. I know it's more work, and I know that's not an easy answer, but really, truly, the better shape that you're in and the more under control your weight is, the easier your pregnancy, the easier your labor and birth, the less strain and aches and pains as you get bigger and as you gain weight, the less risk for complications. Being in good shape and being like healthy and eating well is going to be my biggest recommendation pre and especially early on in your labor in your pregnancy. All right. Sorry, bear with me here. Can I use a peanut ball to labor at home? So if you haven't seen my peanut ball videos, those ones were so much fun to do. I'm in love with peanut balls, as is any labor and delivery nurse. So yes, you can use a peanut ball at home. Even not being pregnant, I have been very impressed with how comfortable a peanut ball is. And so yes, peanut balls though are particularly helpful for like once you get an epidural. Less so than pre, but you can do whatever you want. Peanut ball makes me giggle. LMAO. I'm glad. All right. Shilena says, what would be a good idea to be ready to give birth without any pain meds and assist at home? Take my coping with labor class, not to pimp myself out, but to pimp myself out because I guarantee you it will help both you and your partner. Okay. Baby navel care, tips and cautions. So for newborn umbilical cord care, honestly, oxygen heals. So leave it alone. Make sure it's clean and dry. Don't submerge the baby into the bath water until their cord falls off, and let it be. And then look out for signs of infection. I'm getting to your questions in I have probably 2 more questions I'll answer here, and then I'll get to your live questions, okay? B. Francisco says, newborns' eyes are gunky. This is so good. I heard a drop of breast milk in the eye works. Okay, so I'm not going to recommend anything without talking to your pediatrician, but I will say that we did do this with my nephew. So gunky eyes, the concern is that babies are at risk for infection. If they were exposed to bacteria that like caused an infection, their eyes can get gunky and have secretions, but also blocked tear ducts are a thing. And so if you notice like some secretions, some like, honestly, to me, it looks like pus, like it can be yellow or green. And that like helps, like when you have pink eye, you know how your eye gets like stuck shut? That if you see those secretions on the eyes, it probably is just a clogged tear duct. That's what my nephew had. He had some of that. If you see it there and it bothers you, you can wipe it away, but I would use a very clean cloth or those 4x4 gauzes that I mentioned on Instagram multiple times. And it's actually coming as a recommendation on my top baby products video that's coming as well. So if that's out and you're watching this later, you can go over there and see that. But anyway, like a clean wet cloth that's like warm water, and then just wipe from inside to out and not inside their eye. They'll close their eye and just wipe it away. Real simple. Do not go back over it because you're reintroducing bacteria. Our eyes are very absorbent to bacteria. And so we don't want to reinfect the eye, but having clogged tear ducts is very normal. It's just a part of it. And especially if there was an infection, even like ear infection, eye infection, a drop of breast milk, absolutely. Breast milk is liquid gold and it does help heal. So it's not gonna harm your baby's eye. If you wanna try it, absolutely. Okay? Okay. Oh, that's a good one too. Oh, you guys kill me. I wish I could just be on here forever. All right. Ooh, this is fun. Actually, I'm just gonna mention this so that you guys know. Jenna Ann says, hi, I'm an RN, L&D nurse. Can you do some stories about different laboring positions? So yes, I would suggest watching my peanut ball videos, watching my how to engage the baby video. And then if you don't know, we have bundle birth nurses. So myself and Justine are working on a free program that's going to be launched very soon. There's a mentorship program coming, and then we have in-person training specifically for that. So stay tuned for when they're upcoming, because especially once COVID's over, we are on. We will come to your hospital. We make it very affordable to you. So if you are interested in that, you can go to bundlebirth.com/nurses and look into that. Hit me up, send me an email, and we're good to go. So I want to make sure you know that's available because we haven't done very well at advertising. But for those of you L&D nurses, we do train nurses. All right. Oh my gosh, guys, this is so hard to choose. Okay, Hannah Ortiz 123. This, I will say, there was a new CDC article that just came out that I did get a DM about and somebody was freaking out about. She says, are pregnant women still on the high risk of getting COVID? So I want to address this very quickly and then I'll move to your questions here. The CDC article basically said, yes, you are at higher risk for getting COVID and being hospitalized and having complications. Honestly, if you go back to my coronavirus videos, which I have 2 that were coughing questions and then just like a one on coronavirus, and there's also a hand washing one, go over there and watch that. That's from March. Not much has changed from March. And in that, we only had a few thousand cases in the United States when I put that out. And I did say actually that as much as we don't have the data, that we know that pregnancy is an immunocompromised state. So of course we have to assume that you guys are at higher risk. This is nothing new. This is what we have assumed. And now we have a little bit more data on it, which I haven't even read the actual study. So I will fully disclaim that, but I did read the CDC article that basically said, yes, you are at higher risk. Take the necessary precautions, guys. Wash your hands. Don't touch your face when you're out and about. Wear your masks. Stay away if you can. Work from home. It's all the same, okay? It's gonna be okay. Do your best. And, you know, and within reason, protect yourself. Okay, I'm ending with this and then I'm going to your live questions. Megan Walsh 12, you guys have been asking so many doula questions, which I love. She says, what are 3 things you think each doula should live by? I could have a lot. In fact, I like have a dream of training doulas, like putting up together like a whole certification thing. So if you want that, let me know as well. Not enough time in the day. I have so many ideas. Okay. So first of all, let me tell you what a doula is a hired labor support help. They're there for physical and emotional labor support. For those of you doulas out there, first of all, I appreciate you so much. You are doing such important work. I love you, and you are all such amazing people. Number two would be, slash, that's not the first one, like second part to that comment, is that I would say for a doula that be okay that your presence is enough. And a lot of times for doulas, it's like labor takes so long and you're literally just hanging out with the client for a lot of it and like doing the same thing over and over again. And especially for those of you new doulas, it's like a lot of times you feel like you have to do something constantly or switch it up or give a suggestion or whatever. That be okay with just being, that your presence is therapeutic, okay? That would be number one. I could talk about that for a very long time. Number two would be know your scope. This is totally in love, but I will speak specifically to the nursing side, and that's one of the dreams of mine with a doula certification would be like talking about scope in detail and then helping you strategize on how to work in the hospital and get along and be the one that your doctors recommend to their clients. Because as we know, there is some doula hospital clash, doula doctor, doula nurse clash. And partially what I saw and experienced on both sides, because I've been the doula that they don't know has her nursing license and is a labor and delivery nurse. And then I've been the labor and delivery nurse that's working with the doulas. LA is very doula friendly. There's lots of doulas here. It's a common thing to have doulas in the room, whereas versus other places in the world that maybe is not the case. And so I would say understand that your scope is not to give medical related advice or even information. Your job is to help them advocate for themselves, that them being the patient or you guys, okay? And so learn, and that's a strategy. That is hard. Even for me, it's hard, right? And I am very much functioning in the doula role. And I have some added permissions because I am a nurse. I can do some other things that maybe a doula can't do, but I'm still navigating that awkward dynamic. And so the other one would be along those lines would be see your care team as an ally and get comfortable in the hospital. If you want to work and be successful, you can choose to just do home births, but the percentage of home births versus hospital births, we need doulas that are well-versed in the hospital, that know how to function there, that get along with staff, that your job is to get along with the hospital personnel and build them as allies. And so work towards being that person that like gets along with the nurses because it's only going to benefit the client. And then also, I know it's uncomfortable, but get comfortable with the hospital setting. You're going to be way more successful and open up doors for clients that aren't interested in a home birth because that is such a small population. You need to be comfortable there. And so it's partially one of my dreams for helping you. That's what I got. There's probably more. Flex and flow. Help them flex and flow. And use your hands. That's the other thing that I learned from Anna Paula Markell, who's like the doula extraordinaire of LA. And she just, I remember like a lot of times, especially as a new doula, you want all the things when ultimately you just need your hands. Okay? All right, guys, we've come to your questions. Those of you that have stuck around for 48 minutes, bless you. I will answer your questions now. So if you have copied and pasted, now's the time. I see them all coming in like 5,000 minutes an hour, questions a second. Okay, so Shadi 031, I have seen you post so many times. How should I go about finding a pediatrician? Okay, my biggest recommendation for finding a pediatrician is distance to your house. Second biggest one is availability / accessibility. So when you're finding a pediatrician, I'll talk about like how to find them, but what you're looking for is for them to be accessible, for them to have some sort of on-call line that you can call 24/7 and get a quick response, get an answer, get to talk to somebody in the case of an emergency. And even, well, actually that's not true. Not in the case of an emergency. If it's an emergency, call 911, go to the ER. But for those of you that are concerned or there's something that comes up in the middle of the night, that's that. And then distance to the house, you're gonna be seeing them potentially a good amount, especially in the first month-ish. I know for us, we saw somebody like 4 out of this first 7 days. And so you don't want to be driving 45 minutes to go see them when you're postpartum anyway. So close to that, I would start with your doctor and ask if they have any recommendations. Then I would check in with your insurance company and look at the ones close by. I would actually suggest to read online reviews. I will say when I've looked up doctors I've worked with online, they're pretty accurate, to be honest. Like obviously like within reason, like if you have one off that like one horrible story, that doesn't define their entire career, but you can kind of get a feel for people and then you can set up an interview with them. Some doctor's offices may not do this, but you could call the office and say, hey, I'm searching for a pediatrician. Does your pediatrician offer a like interview visit? You can do the same thing with an OB. And they probably would do that telehealth and you can answer your questions. Hi, England. Christy, I see you. So that's my recommendation for now. All right. All right. Jessica Singh, is it easier to produce milk for your second child? Does breastfeeding get easier? If you breastfed the first time around, absolutely. Breastfeeding is typically easier the second time around. Milk production, your milk does come in a little bit quicker with the second, third, fourth baby. But I will say, as far as like you guys coordinating and working together, it is still a new baby that's never done it before. And so there still may be some learning curve there. But if you've done it before, typically it does get easier the more times you breastfeed. All right. Oopsies. Oh my goodness. All right, where did your comments go? All right, how do you feel about primrose oil and red raspberry leaf tea? When should I start? From the Harold fam. I personally don't recommend evening primrose oil. I know that the studies are pretty both sides. Like sometimes people say it helps with labor and the other studies or whatever show that it actually can harm labor. And so I do talk about this in a previous Coffee and Questions. So I usually just say, you know what, skip it, trust your body, guys. Like it is not the magic pill to get you into labor. There's so much of it that you gotta just let go and let it happen. Red raspberry leaf tea, sure, do it. Not first, I usually say by third trimester, you can start drinking your tea, amp it up. Increase the amount or like do it more regularly towards the end, but absolutely, yeah. All right. Erica Walker says, you and your sister mentioned meds through the IV to go to the baby. What ones go through, sorry, it's moving. What ones go through to baby and what do you recommend? I don't want to risk baby. Okay, so what we were mentioning were IV narcotic medications that are pain medications for your labor. Anything that goes in your IV, in theory, you can assume probably crosses through to the baby to some extent. Now, there's different sizes of molecules. You have the little ones and then you have the big ones. The big ones are going to be less likely to fit through the placenta to the baby. So in general, like of course, there's going to be ones that affect the baby and don't. This is like very complicated. You can take my medical interventions class. I talk all about it in there, but the quick answer is that any of the IV pain medications are going to cross the placenta to the baby, but as long as you're not close to delivery, they probably won't make that much difference because the goal would be that you metabolize them out of your system, therefore baby's system, by the time they're born, and then it really has very little, if not any effect. So you're not gonna harm the baby long term by taking IV medications, but it temporarily does get to the baby, and if that bothers you, then don't do it. Okay. This is a good one. Oh no, how much time do we have? You didn't know you hit a soft spot in me, Beauty APB. So she says, is there any harm to having IV fluids? I know it helps you to not be dehydrated, which means less painful contractions. Okay, nurses, I'm talking to you. IV fluids are standard. Pretty standard meaning they're standard. If you go to the hospital, you get an IV, they likely will hook you up to a maintenance dose of IV fluids. It's 125 milliliters per hour. So in the grand scheme of things, it's like having your mug, which I do have coffee in here. I saw somebody ask what prompted the 10 p.m. live. This was the first chance that I have gotten to get on here for you guys. It's the first of the month. I like to do coffee and questions either the first or the last day of the month. And this was the only time I had. And it was either now or never. So here we are. So I do actually have leftover coffee because I've been drinking coffee all day, if you can't tell, in here. So it's like sipping little water throughout to keep you maintenance dose. Now, throughout labor, they may give you more fluids to help with the heart rate of the baby. It's a whole other side piece that somewhat of a pet peeve, but it is what it is. Help if you are contracting too much. It can help space out contractions if there's too many. It can help with low blood pressure. It can help for pre-epidural, etc. There's lots of reasons. I think my pet peeve with that is too much IV fluids. So I think in labor and delivery, us nurses, we know that we're pretty liberal with those IV fluids, and we just open them up, just give them a liter, give them 500, give them 250. And cumulatively over time, you can fluid overload a patient. And that does have long-term risk, long and short-term risk, mostly short-term, but in labor and delivery, they're not gonna see that. So is there risk to it? Yes, to being fluid overloaded, to have too much fluid in your body, you end up super swollen. And if your body can't handle the amount of fluid and like digest it through your kidneys, then it can actually go into your tissues and then eventually affect your breathing. So yeah, you wanna pay attention loosely to how much IV fluids are going in. If they're giving you liters and liters and liters, especially if you're not peeing it out, it's probably not a good thing. It also can slow down labor. So that's more of a nursey question, but definitely a trigger for me because I have a nursing training coming on that one, very much in the works. Okay. How soon is too soon for a third child? My baby is 9 months old. I mean, okay. So I know the recommendation, I do have a video on this. The recommendation is to wait 18 months before you conceive after having a baby. Not everybody has the luxury of time. If you started having babies at 35 or 40 and you want 3 kids, I don't know about 3, but you might be able to whip out 3 kids, you're gonna need to have them back to back. So the risk is low. The recommendation for safest pregnancy is 18 months. But if you and your partner are ready to have another one, talk to your OB and then get pregnant. Jacqueline Rajan says, my husband is an ER doc. Is it a good idea to have a doula? Not pregnant yet, but I will start trying in a few months. Well, congratulations on that journey. Okay, so your husband's an ER doc. He is not a labor and delivery nurse. I will say too, like anecdotally, any pregnant person that goes into the ER, they're like, send them to labor and delivery. Like they do not know what to do with pregnant people. They're so overwhelmed. And so just because he may be able to help you navigate the hospital system really well and advocate for your needs, but the actual labor piece probably, unless he's like a very unique ER doc, probably is still gonna be overwhelming for him. And so yes. And the other thing is you also have to know your audience as far as like how supportive he is, how like smushy gushy he is, and what you actually need, etc. So know your audience, but also know that like the doula or the labor support person, the birth coach, is there to help support your partner to know how to help you. And I would say like maybe even the majority of the time, I'm more helping the partner to feel confident and assured that they're doing the right thing than I am the actual laboring person, which is loosey-goosey, like I said. All right, the Harrell fam, I see you with this. How did your nephew do after circumcision? Any pain? Okay, so my nephew was circumcised. That was their own personal choice. What you do is what you do. Whole nother thing. And I have also, just so you guys know, I've decided I will not be talking about vaccinations likely, although things could change, who knows. But in general, I don't talk about vaccinations or circumcision. Opinion on that. We could do risk benefit maybe, but in general, they chose to circumcise. And it looked real angry for the first couple of days, and it always does. And then it healed up like probably within like a week. So I usually give up to 2 weeks because every baby is different, but usually within like the first 5 to 7 days, it's looking so much better. He would cry when we'd change his diaper, but he still cries when he changed their diapers. So, and they said during the circumcision, they actually opted against sugar water at my recommendation, whole nother topic. And they just did the numbing. They do numb the tip of the penis for the circumcision. And I guess he like laid there in this like eerie way and just looked at her like, I know you're cutting off the tip of my penis, but I'm good. So he did great with it. I think afterwards, obviously, like he cried for the diaper changes and stuff, but all right. Kayla Payne, can you come to NC? North Carolina. I'm like, huh, what is that? And be my helping nurse. You're simply amazing. Yeah, that is actually an option. I will be very candid. It's not cheap, but I am open to travel. I also have virtual services, guys. So I'm like booked for July, August due dates. End of August, maybe might have an opening depending, but September, October, November, December 2020, I do have availability. So if you want me to help you, I would love to. You're so sweet. Okay, love this. TMC, this will relate back to the support video. Tips or ideas for helping support mom in the postpartum when we don't live in the same city, also being in the time of Corona, which would be the same, whether you live in the same city or not, like being socially distanced. Okay, so watch that video because there are things in there like asking her about her birth story or buying things actually on the registry. I would say check-ins for emotional support. If you have an emotional relationship with her, that those check-ins I would go to. The other thing would be probably food, or if it's not time of Corona, like paying for some sort of like household service, like a cleaning person or whatever. So emotional support and then sending them food would be my recommendation. All right, Shelby P says, I want to have a baby unmedicated. How would you say I mentally prepare? Perfect. So without an epidural, I would say 100% you have to prepare because it will be one of the hardest things you ever do. I think you can do it totally, but you're going to need some training. My analogy always for this is you wouldn't run a marathon without training for it, right? That would be kind of stupid. And you probably wouldn't make it. And so same way around, I would say, watch my breathing video, have support because you do have statistically a higher chance when you have a doula. And then take a coping with labor class. I have one on my website. Take some sort of coping class and probably a childbirth class because it's like you have to know what's happening to know it's normal to just fully labor and then cope with it and have some tools to cope. So that would be that recommendation. The other book recommendation I have for you is Ina May's Guide to Childbirth. So if you are a reader and like that's how you learn best, that's probably my favorite book for like an unmedicated birth. And I will say the first half is birth stories, second half is like more teaching. And I would say start with the second half of the book. And then if you feel like you need help with the stories, like add the stories. That would be my favorite book recommendation for it. You got it. All right. When to pack your hospital bag? 37 weeks. Okay, I'm going back. I don't want to miss anyone. Oh. Okay, Hannah Perkins, bless you. Do you plan to have a Spanish translation for your birth classes? Yes, this is very much on the horizon. If any of you want to volunteer, please volunteer. This is very much on my list of things to do also for my YouTube videos because I did grow up overseas. I actually grew up in South America and Ecuador. And so I like having this as a resource to people in other countries and then who don't speak English as a first language. That is a huge passion of mine. So yes, it's on my list. It's just very complicated. So I'm trying. Okay. Oh, Charmin, I see your story. Oh, that's so hard. Do I recommend turmeric for postpartum swelling? Yeah, I mean, I don't know that, I'd have to look it up as far as if there's any contraindication for breastfeeding, but I don't think there is, because turmeric is very popular for postpartum, like especially Ayurveda and like postpartum recipes and stuff. So absolutely, if you want to use turmeric for postpartum swelling, or add it to your stews and your soups or your smoothies, probably not your smoothies. Although I do add it to my smoothies at times. Turmeric is not my favorite taste. But yeah, go for it. Okay, I'm 30 weeks and my baby has been breech at my last ultrasound. Should I do exercises to help her flip, or should I not stress out and let her flip on her own? This comes from Allegra Schuling. Okay, at 30 weeks, I would say just trust the process, okay? If at 34-ish weeks, baby is still breech, then I would watch my breech videos and start doing the exercises, because it is not uncommon that at 30 weeks, there's still breech. I think my sister was transverse like up until like the week before I came, which would have been like 36-ish weeks. So, okay. Gil Ritz says, how to prepare for delivery in this COVID situation. I actually have a class on this. It tags on to my labor prep class. It's on my website for sale. I think it's only $20. I can't remember how much it is. But honestly, if you're truly interested in all the prep for time of Corona, I have a class on it. It's a webinar that I did, and it has like nothing really has changed. So learn that class. Okay. Kristen's story. I have a religious restrictions on what I can put in my body. Can you recommend a site where I can see the common medications used during labor and ingredients in them? You have stumped me. I do not have a site offhand. Okay, I will name off the ones that I can think of. Okay. Pitocin. You can remember these and look them up yourself. Pitocin, fentanyl, Stadol, Phenergan, Zofran, IV fluids, which is technically a medication, but not really a medication. Cervidil, Cytotec, Methergin, Hemabate, Terbutaline. Tylenol, Motrin in postpartum, Bicitra. And then if you had like general anesthesia, then that's like a whole nother separate thing. You can just look up general anesthesia. Epidural is probably bupivacaine, ropivacaine, lidocaine. That's my quick list. Nurses, you can add any more that you can think of down below. That's my super quick list for labor. That's what I got. Okay. I'm 39 weeks. Aja Kiana. I'm 39. Keeps going away. I'm 39 weeks. What's the safest thing to do to encourage labor naturally? I've tried walking, pineapple, dates, sex, spicy food, still nothing. Okay. I wish I had the magic remedy for starting labor. I don't. No one does, because your body will give birth in its own perfect time. Okay. This is probably not what you want to hear. The most effective way, good night, Jessica. Thank you for being here. All of you guys who are here like late at night, God bless you. So let go. I have a whole video on this. I've done all the things. Why won't I go into labor? Let go, trust your body. I know you're tired of being pregnant, but this is where like you can do all the things, but then it's like, I'm trying to control versus I'm controlling what I can and I'm letting go of the rest. So that's my recommendation. Now, the most effective would be stripping the membranes, nipple stimulation. But if your body's not ready to go into labor, it will not go into labor. You will be wasting your life. So just enjoy, rest, bond with your partner, prepare for baby, and then let go. All right. You're welcome. Aja. All right. All right. I have a lot of pain in my ribs at 33 weeks. Is this normal? Probably. Talk to your doctor about it, but probably as your uterus expands, your ribs actually can kind of push out, and it can cause contractions. It can cause pain. So talk to your doctor to be sure, but yeah, it sounds very normal. Okay, how can I loosen up my pelvic area? I am expecting a little pain. All right, so loosening up your pelvic area would be stretches. Now, with stretching at the end of your pregnancy especially, you're going to need to be very careful and trust your body and your instincts to not like overdo it. So stretches would be my recommendation for you, my quick answer to that. I'm trying to get through as many questions as I can. Brianna Aguilar says, can you talk about the midwives brew? I will do a dedicated YouTube video on this. Yes, I will talk about it. It'll be a quick one because there's not that much to say, but although with me, like Lord knows, there probably will be. You want to freeze your eggs. Would you recommend a mom to donate her eggs before having her tubes removed? Erica, I don't know. I feel like that's a very individualized question. Like, would you remove your eggs to donate them? Or would you already have eggs removed and then donate them? If you have eggs, you could donate them for sure. That's a great thing to do, especially if you're not going to use them. I would say though, if you're not gonna, like if you haven't removed them already, then just tie your tubes. What causes lightning crotch? Baby moving and triggering something in your vagina. We don't totally know, but that's probably it. All right, guys, I think you have so many amazing questions and they're just gonna keep coming. So I think, oh gosh, I wanna answer them all. Okay, I saw you, Jasmine, on Instagram. I'm gonna end with this one. My son is 10 weeks and he still is very fussy after feeding, but when I pump, I can get as much as 10 ounces. What should be my next steps? Okay, lots of possibilities here. Talk to your pediatrician, talk to a lactation consultant. 10 weeks, you know that you don't have a milk supply issue. If you are getting 10 ounces when you pump, this kid, there's probably something else going on there that is causing them to still be fussy after you feed them because they're not hungry after 10 ounces, okay? There's like no way. They may have really high suck needs. My first recommendation to you would be to introduce a pacifier because they may just want to be at the breast and you can snuggle them, put them skin to skin and give them a pacifier because at that point, it's like they may just need to suck to soothe. They may have gas pains. That's another huge possibility that like they need to burp more. They are actually sleepy. Bundle them up, rock them, turn them out so you're not overstimulating them. There's probably something else going on. This kid at 10 ounces that you're pumping is probably not hungry. Now, the way you know that is by gaining weight and diapers. So if they have enough weight and their diapers are gaining weight, they're getting enough. It's not necessarily an issue of hunger. It's probably more pacifying on the breast, okay? Guys, I wish I could stay on here forever, but I will be back. And I will be back with so many more videos. And I will be back over on Instagram. So if you don't follow me on Instagram, go over there. Most of you probably heard about this live because of Instagram because that's the only place that I announced it. So I have more information going on over there. I will be back here for more lives, more collab videos are coming. I have tons of stuff already filmed that's coming to you as well. Thank you so much for being here for this like 72 minutes, which is insane. You guys give me life. You encourage me. You keep me going. I mean that every time I say that, but that truly is the truth. Without you, there's no way I would be still on here. So thank you for that. If you have any other comments, questions, concerns, throw them in the comment box down below. If you're on here live / also if you're watching later, I will be putting the description box in with things and I will probably write down all the questions that we answered here. So you can check out the description box. If you want more from me, head on over to bundlebirth.com. Send me an email with what you're looking for. We can help customize a package for you if you're looking for online labor support, online meaning virtual, or if you're in the LA area and you're looking for in-person anything, I am here for you. Nurses, stay tuned because we have some fun stuff coming, and in fact, there may actually be a video coming for you. I'm planning on a coffee and questions live specifically for nurses, which will be very fun for you guys to get the insider scoop. Teaching nurses and answering your questions over at Bundle Birth Nurses. So thank you guys so much. Make sure you subscribe down below and then Don't forget to flex and flow, and I will see you soon.